Hello, everybody, and yes, a very different angle this time. Again, I'm just experimenting where to sit and do these types of videos, but I think this side of the angle is actually quite good. A nice little wide shot for you. And also, as you can notice, just right there, we got ourselves a poster. Changing things up on the little horror review side, so much rather, just see me talk about the movie. I think it would be much nicer to have like a poster beside about the movie that I'm talking about. So if you guys do not know, if you missed the title or whatever, or if you're new to this channel, lately I've been doing horror-related reviews every single Monday. And basically what that entails, basically I call them Movie Macabre Mondays. So basically every week I do a horror movie review every Monday. And if you guys are also new, I've been also focusing on the Universal monsters, mainly Frankenstein. So today's review will be obviously Son of Frankenstein. So in Son of Frankenstein, it's obviously a third sequel into the Frankenstein series, and it essentially picks up where the last sequel left off, mainly Bride of Frankenstein. And with saying that, I do know that it's not technically a true sequel to the Bride of Frankenstein, because in this one, you're introduced to new cast members. Of course, you get the returning Boris Karloff and the monster's role, which is always awesome to see. But sadly, this marks the last appearance of the monster he is in. So, yeah, it kind of sucks. This will be his swan song as it is. Main reason why this is his last film role as a monster, he didn't want to continue doing it and just got sick and tired of it. Sick and tired of playing the monster, pretty much. So that's pretty much why. And also, he didn't want to get into the other sequels because apparently Universal wanted to go more of a campier B-movie route. So he pretty much, Boris Karloff didn't want to do that no more. So there's your explanation there. And the other cast members include Basil Rathbone as Frankenstein's son, Baron Wolf von Frankenstein, and you also get the lovely Bela Lugosi as Igor. And again, Igor, as I mentioned in the Frankenstein review way back, if you watched that video, Igor is essentially an amalgamation, well, in pop culture, he's an amalgamation of, the movie and essentially the Hunchback version in the first movie. So, interesting. Obviously, Bela Lugosi's Igor doesn't have a hunchback. He has a broken neck, but we'll get to that in a minute. So that's it of your main, popular cast there. And essentially, where Son of Frankenstein takes place, literally takes place a few years after the second movie. Again, Henry Frankenstein, again, you don't see any explanation about where his whereabouts is, but unfortunately, due to the actor's passing, they couldn't include Henry Frankenstein in the sequel. So they kind of written him off out of the movie and just gave Basil Rathbone sibling. So essentially, the Son of Frankenstein is going back to his roots to essentially investigate his background, history, and knowledge about the monster. He's very curious about the monster of Frankenstein and wants to and essentially he wants to redeem his father's reputation so he doesn't, his father doesn't look badly in the public anymore. So basically that's his main plot point there. So upon arriving at the village, he essentially gets, resentment from the villagers in the town that he's visiting because, well, they don't want him there anymore. And they don't want the same reputation of bringing back the monster again and wreaking havoc on the town. So poor Baron Frankenstein doesn't make much friends in the village and essentially is kind of casted out along with his family. But he does make one friend, though, a local policeman named Inspector Krogh. Now, Inspector Krogh is, I'm probably mispronouncing the name wrong, but he's played by the brilliant Lionel Atwill. Now, I say Lionel Atwill with emphasis because of the fact Lionel Atwill is a fantastic actor in this. He essentially plays kind of a, badass inspector. His background on Inspector Krogh is that his arm got ripped off from the monster when he was a kid, and now he has a wooden arm. And there's a comical, if you've seen Young Frankenstein, they kind of play around with that a bit. I'm sure everybody's seen Young Frankenstein at one point. That's basically an homage. And if you've seen Young Frankenstein, that's viewing option to view it between between this movie and Ghost of Frankenstein, because they kind of play homages to the third movie as well as the Bride of Frankenstein. So a little trivia there. But anyways, we're not talking about, Young Frankenstein. We're talking about Son of Frankenstein. So in Son of Frankenstein, Inspector Krog is played by the brilliant Lionel Atwill, who's a great actor, and he Universal monster movies through the past few years after this one. Mainly Ghost of Frankenstein, who plays another sibling of, Baron, and then the son of Henry, another the bloodline of the Frankenstein gene. So he plays kind of like the sibling to Baron in that movie. And he also plays a couple of recurring roles here and there on and off in both the Monster Mash movies, mainly House of Dracula and House of Frankenstein. So yeah, he's a pretty great character actor, and he's definitely awesome in this one with his acting abilities. So he makes friends with this colonel, and he essentially tells him about, Frankenstein and his creation and all that. And of course, Baron Frankenstein has always been curious about the Frankenstein creation and wants to explore more of it. So while his family is settling into the new House Accords, he essentially sees an abandoned castle that's in ruin again. It's not clearly stated, but it's obviously through visuals that it's suggested that that's the same castle that burned down in the second movie, mainly Bride of Frankenstein. So out of morbid curiosity, Baron investigates the castle, and he sees a stranger named Igor. And of course, as I said before, Igor is played by none other than the brilliant Bela Lugosi. And once again, just brilliant makeup effects by Jack Pierce. Again, like I said, the makeup effects on Igor is very impressive with Jack Pierce's creativity, because as suggested, it's Igor's kind of like one of the kind of baddies in it. He's kind of disowned by the villagers, and he got, hung by the villagers, and his neck broke. And very nice makeup job on the neck, because as you can see, it's just a nice, bone kind of piercing out of the skin makeup job by Jack Pierce, and just looks awesome. I actually like how Igor looks in this one. I especially like how they gave him a beard and shaggy hair too. It makes it quite distinctive in the movie. And main reason why he was hanged is basically because he was robbing graves. So much later, you find out that through backstory and Igor showing Baron Frankenstein the monster finally, he's in a comatose state, basically. The Frankenstein monster essentially survived a big explosion and Bride of Frankenstein, and essentially is back to conscious, basically unconscious now. And essentially where his body is in this cemetery position where his other father and basically his lineage were buried. And on that coffin, Henrik von Frankenstein, maker of monsters. And with that, he decides to, basically he's all excited and decides to resurrect the monster once again. And it's a great scene too, because as the scene plays out, Basil Rathbone scratches his coffin and writes men instead of monsters. So much later when they try, there's a great, experimental scenes in the movie. I love how, again, all with the Frankenstein movies and the Universal Monsters series, they always do the laboratory scenes in an extravagant, grand way. So you get another scene like that in the movie, and they eventually revive Frankenstein. Frankenstein's monster. Unfortunately, though, there is a downside, because unfortunately, the monster only responds to Igor's commands. And essentially, because of the responses that Igor gives. Essentially, Igor tries to revenge on the other villagers in the town to get back at them. And, of course, much later on, Baron Frankenstein discovers what Igor's plan is and tries to stop him and shoots him. And you don't see whether he gets killed or not. Obviously, he doesn't get killed because, spoiler alert, Igor survives in the fourth movie, which we'll talk about later. But in this one, it's made apparent that he dies. As soon as the monster discovers this, he goes to Frankenstein's castle once again and kidnaps his son, which is quite a devastating scene as it plays out. His son's throwing a big, temper tantrum for obvious reasons to try to escape from the monster. It doesn't work out. And the monster, kidnaps his son and takes him back to the castle. Unfortunately, though, for obvious reasons, seeing how childlike the monster's been in the couple of the scenes of the movie, he doesn't kill the child. I should also mention, though, I forgot to mention this, in this movie, for some odd reason, the monster doesn't speak in this movie. For whatever reason, it's not explained why he doesn't speak, but it's generally assumed that because he was in a coma state, he essentially lost the ability to speak after that collapse of the castle in the second movie of Bride of Frankenstein. So it's generally assumed that because of the concussion he had, essentially the monster lost the ability to speak in this movie. So during that, Baron Frankenstein discovers that his son is missing and tries to go to stop the monster. Obviously, you can't stop the monster by himself, so he goes to Inspector Korch. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing the name wrong, like I said. And a battle ensues in the laboratory. And it's such a terrific battle scene. Well, fighting scene, I should say. Because you get some interesting dynamics between Baron Frankenstein, the monster, and eventually, Inspector Korch. And one of the famous scenes in particular, Inspector Korch is trying to fight off the monster, and the monster rips open his arm, thinking that he killed him, but he doesn't, and Korch shoots him. So as the monster rips off Korch's arms through the battle, his fake arm, by the way, the wooden arm. Also, there's also a cool scene, too, where Korch has darts lined up. I forgot to mention this as well. Again, I'm going back and forth, but he has a dart scene where he's throwing darts. It's just awesome. I love that scene. Anyway, so when the battle ensues between Korch, Baron Frankenstein, and the Frankenstein monster, the Frankenstein goes up to the Inspector Korch and rips open his arm. Obviously, it's his fake arm, not his real arm, because this is all obviously, pre-1940s, days where all those stuff can't really be as graphic as today's horror movies. So as Korch's arm is ripped off, Baron Frankenstein swings on the rope to kick the monster back, and essentially saving his son in the process. And you also get a cool scene of the Frankenstein monster falling into the molten lava where he was essentially preserved. I forgot to mention too, he was preserved through molten sulfur. Sulfur was where he was preserved through the coma state, and essentially is, toasting. And basically, short little ending there. Wolf leaves, Baron Frankenstein leaves with his family. He leaves the castle to the villagers to do whatever they want. The film ends basically the villagers cheering as Frankenstein's family leaves. So with that being said, what did I think of Son of Frankenstein? So unfortunately, this movie, in my opinion, isn't as strong as the first Frankenstein movie or the second Frankenstein movie, Bride of Frankenstein, simply because of the unfortunate mishappenings and death of James Whale and Colin Clive. Again, it would have been nice to see them back again to do a third Frankenstein movies, but can't really help it since under circumstances, right? So, kind of sucks. But nonetheless, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was highly entertaining, and, seeing Basil Rathbone as the sibling to, the son of Frankenstein, and Boris Karloff in essentially his last starring role as a Frankenstein monster. And not only that, seeing Bela Lugosi in a different role in the Universal Monsters saga. Instead of Dracula, he's Igor. And just a lot of those scenes with those three actors make up the whole movie. And overall, it's a nicely paced story and movie overall. And definitely fun with a lot of quirky characters with Inspector Crow. With that being said, though, as fun as this movie is, I do have to give the benefit of the doubt. I think the last two movies in the Frankenstein series are a lot better. So my rating for Son of Frankenstein is a 3.5 out of 5. It's solid, it's fun, it does its job well, but unfortunately with the lack of, mainly because of the fact that the absence of James Will and Colin Clive, you don't get that whole, how I should say, nuance and, bold flavor in the movie. So, yeah, 3.5 is where I sit well with this movie. It's solid, it's a fun movie, but it's definitely by no means the best out of the Frankenstein movies, and definitely by no means greater than Bride of Frankenstein. To me, that's probably the best Frankenstein sequel in the Frankenstein series to this date. So that is it for my review of Son of Frankenstein, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. And yeah, stay tuned for more Movie Macabre Mondays. As you can see, I'm always posting different stuff on this channel, whether it be toy reviews or movie reviews. Anything geek, I do on this channel. So if you like that kind of stuff, just click that subscribe button, hit the bell icon to get notified on my future coming videos, and just generally like and comment on this video if you like this video and enjoyed it, or if you want me to improve on certain things, etc., whatever your taste will be. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, and as always, from Morgan Entertainment, stay entertained.